Welcome to Arcade Couch, the best place to chill with your friends and get your gaming goodness every Saturday at 6 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time. I'm Dylan Blight. Joining me on the couch today, Ashley Hobley.
Hey, on the couch again.
That's right. Get out of my seat, though. Back to where you belong.
No, I just record from this side all the time. So.
Oh, okay. That's just wherever
fine.
you're comfiest. That's fair enough. Also, Cherie is joining us.
Hello.
That one. Yeah.
Yep, that's me, Captain Cuties. She's
Yeah.
back.
Maybe I should... No, I can't change your name to Captain Cuties. That'd be too confusing. We can't go as far as to change your... Yeah, no, you've already got a nickname. You can't change your nickname to a nickname and then give you a second nickname.
Why not?
I don't know. It seems like it's a lot. It's a lot happening. Today on the show, we'll be discussing Apple's gaming subscription service reveal, Sekiro Shadows Die Twice many times over, and rumors of new Switch models coming out. But first, let's dive into the one shitty story, and I'll say straight up front, I'm not going to try not to spend the entire episode talking about it. Ash will stop me. He'll be like, they're sick of it, Dylan. Just everyone gets it. You hate it. But we're going to bring it up. So EA today, as of recording, has laid off 350 employees from their company while still paying, of course, high officials, including the CEO, Andrew Wilson, who reportedly earns something like $35 million a year salary, which I saw someone do the maths on Twitter and worked out that if each of those employees was earning X amount of this, they could have actually left most of those employees. They could have left all 350 employees alone and fired one person instead. Andrew Wilson. Solved the problem. Done. It's all good. So, who got fired? You may be wondering why. The story comes from Jason Schreier, of course, over at Kotaku. It says EA lays off 350 people in marketing, publishing, and more. The video game publisher Electronic Arts is laying off 350 people in marketing, publishing, and other areas. The latest move in what's been a brutal year for gaming industry. In an email to employees obtained by Kotaku, EA boss Andrew Wilson said the goal would be to streamline decision-making in the marketing and publishing departments following a consolidation that began last year, improve customer support, and change some of its international strategies. A move that includes closing offices in Russia and Japan. Quote, "We have a vision to be the world's greatest games company," he wrote. "If we're honest with ourselves, we're not there right now." No shit. We have to work on our games, our player relationships, and do our business. Across the company, teams are already taking action to ensure that we are creating higher quality games and live services, reaching more platforms with our content and subscriptions, improving our Frostbite tools, focusing our network and cloud gaming priorities, and closing the gap between us and our player communities. What do you reckon, Ash?
2019 year of layoffs.
It appears to be, doesn't it? We're only 3 months in.
I can take the sign down for days without a layoff and episode.
Reset it?
Yep, reset it. So
how many episodes was it?
Only
3?
up to 5.
Oh, okay.
So, you know. Yeah, it's a shitty thing, obviously, to happen. I mean, obviously a lot of... It seems interesting that they're paring down a lot of the marketing and publishing sort of things. I don't know how much work how much extra work people who are staying on will now have to take and that sort of thing. Interesting they're moving out of China and Russia. Maybe clearly not enough
It was
market
Japan
there.
and Russia.
Was it Japan and Russia? Yeah.
Yeah.
Clearly not enough room for Apex. I guess it's not super surprising on the back of probably Battlefield 5 not performing as well as they'd hoped and Anthem not performing as well as they'd hoped. But Apex Legends has been a huge win for them, so... But maybe a little bit too late. And then on the back of all the Star Wars stuff as well, so... Not looking great for EA. And obviously not a great look to keep all these executives quadrupling their salaries and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I mean... I understand wanting to keep your executives around, I guess, but I feel like they're just as replaceable as anybody else. Like, if they don't want to work for that, the salary they're on.
I'll tell you why you fire them, because they've fucked that Star Wars license into the ground. And if they're looking at their earnings and going, fuck, like, We kind of shat the bed with Battlefront 2. We kind of shat the bed with Anthem and Battlefield. Like, whose fault is it that's making all the higher up decisions that are causing all these games to kind of fail?
I guess with Battlefront 2, it's the microtransaction thing that you would assume came from higher up than the actual developers.
That's what the story was. It wasn't the developers. It's EA forcing them to include microtransactions and stuff.
Yeah, so they've got to take the blame for that, and the punishment they're taking is to quadruple their wage, you know, having to deal with all that extra money. It's a real inconvenience.
The article also did state that they were trying to reshuffle some of those staff members back into other sectors of EA, and that they were getting severance pay. It's not just like bye. So I think like with these sorts of situations, you never really know the ins and outs of exactly what's going on within the company. Like, yeah, it's not a good thing, but, you know, are they trying to make smarter decisions now that's actually going to save them later?
Yeah.
It's not to say that they can't re-employ other people or re-employ those people later on. You know, you with these things, you don't know like what the conversations has been like in a lot of the stuff that I was reading. You know, this is something that's been in the works for a while. It's not a surprise to anyone. There's been previous discussions about it. So to me, it just kind of sounds like one of those business moves that they're making for the benefit of the company, and it's just how it has to be in order for them to try and move forward. Really, that's how I'm looking at it. It's
Wrong,
not a good thing, but
that's okay. You're wrong, but it's okay. We'll allow it, because the answer to all these stories is that 350 people should not be fired when there's still so many CEOs earning a ton of money and getting bonuses when they're the ones leading the charge and making the companies fail.
Again.
No, see, this is where... Shut up, Ash. This is where you can't make those snap judgments, because a lot of the time, some of these decisions aren't coming from the very top. They are coming from bottom people that are making choices, those managers in between that are making choices that are leading those other teams to create these things. It's not always the highest person in the food chain. So
this
like
is the shareholders.
If you're looking at it as in who's making the mistakes that's causing them to lose money, like you can't just turn around and say, yeah, it has to be him. He's the one that's making every single decision, because who the fuck has time for that? He certainly doesn't, I'm sure. He's making other decisions. So you can't make that snap judgment to say that he's the one that's driving it, because there's plenty of other people in that company that are making those choices.
Here's my snap judgment. No one deserves the amount of money they're being paid for their jobs. Here's this story from Bloomberg.com from last year, right? It says, EA pays $48 million to design chief among raises to keep talent. Electronic Arts more than quadrupled compensation for its production chief to $48.4 million as the gaming company raised pay for top executives in an effort to keep talent. Patrick Soderbergh, who runs EA Worldwide Studios, was the highest paid of the company's leaders, receiving equity awards totaling $46.3 million, while Chief Executive Officer Andrew Wilson received $35.7 million in total pay, a 79% increase from a year earlier. Blah, 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 blah. You know, here's my thing, and why I'll always be the one arguing in the corner with everyone else on this fucking show every time this happens. I don't think anyone needs that amount of money. that's where it falls
I would
down.
like that amount of money.
No one needs that amount of money. Full stop. They don't deserve the raises they get for their job, and they should fucking get fucked. That's my
It's how business works, unfortunately. You know, it's a demand, supply and demand. There's only a certain supply of high executives, and they're in demand, and you pay them as much as you can to keep them around.
What do they do?
I don't
Nothing.
know. Do the research,
They do
Dylan.
nothing. They fucking cause EA to release a bunch of shitty games, and then Andrew Wilson comes out on EA and goes, "Oh, look, we've increased our..." And I'm like, "Shut the fuck up, I'm sick of you, you're boring, your presentation's shit, shut the fuck up and leave." And he's like, "I'm very proud of the year we've got ahead of us. Would you like to watch some footage of the latest FIFA game?" Get out of here, mate. Leave me alone. I'm sick of
Was
you,
that
you
him?
Tom Slinky fuck.
You sure you got the right person?
Yes, he does come out on stage sometimes, Andrew Wilson does.
Sometimes. Backtracked a little bit.
He's not the only guy on stage during the entire EA conferences. He has come out on stage, though. Little sinky motherfucker. Fucking 37 million.
Those are very stressful. I mean,
it must be very stressful making such high up decisions like to fire 350 people. That's very stressful. And then
oh, God.
You know that he's not making it's.
That is a stressful decision.
It's a pretty low chance that he's actually the one that is making those in and out decisions. You do realize
it's some
that.
guy in accounting going, "Hey, if we cut all these people," and he's just
and then the shareholders
he just signs on the piece of paper, and that's worth a lot of money. That's signature.
Like to do that. There's a lot of things going in and out in these situations. I'm not saying it's right, and I'm not saying his salary is correct either. I'm just saying that you can't. In these situations, you can't just be like, yeah, it's black and white and that's all good to go.
And I'm pretty sure I said last time we talked about this, it's not just a case of keeping people in jobs for the sake of keeping people in jobs. I mean, if they're not producing anything for the company, then what's the point of to keep him around?
If they keep firing the people that actually do the fucking work and all they keep around as CEOs and shit, they won't have any products to put out there.
But that's what I'm saying. You don't even know that these people were good workers. Half of them might have been crap to begin with. You don't know. Half of them could have been the ones making mistakes.
They weren't fired for lack of skill or effort. They were fired because they needed to cut losses and make some money back. That's what they were fired for.
To keep the company. What else do you want from that?
I want them to fucking take money off Andrew Wilson's salary and then and take it as a penitence for him fucking making shitty decisions for the last 5 years.
Okay, next topic.
I look forward to talking about this again in a few more weeks.
I refuse.
Please don't, by the way. Please don't.
I was putting the notes together. I'm like, should I put it in there? We've only just talked about this 5 weeks ago. And I'm like, I refuse. If this shit continues to happen, I will put it in the fucking show notes each and every time it happens, just as a point, just so I can get on here and say it should be happening.
I just find it interesting that you're super angry about this and then not terribly angry yesterday when on What Do You Want to Watch when I talked about the Fox layoffs. Because
that was a company buyout thing where that's completely different. It's
these Disney people, they've got so much money, they could have kept all these people on.
They would have had to keep the entire company. All right, let's imagine this story to put it how it sounds. Let's imagine Xbox, like a big company, right? I don't know.
Let's say Sony actually bought Take-Two.
Okay. And then they decide to shut down one of the studios or something. I don't know. What are we saying?
Yeah.
All right. Sony buys 2K and decides to shut down Take-Two in the takeover or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
You'd be all right with that.
I wouldn't be all right with it, but I would be like, okay, that's
more understandable than cutting losses for the sake of making sure you stay profitable.
Yes, because
or
it's like if I brought, because it's like if I brought every shop in a business, right? So an entire mall, and I brought everything that was inside of it, and then in my takeover decided that I needed to get rid of some places in the takeover. I think that's a little bit different. I don't like when these people literally just lay it out on paper and go, we haven't made much money this past year. What can we do about it? Let's give that guy a raise. He makes $35 million a year already, but let's give him a raise and a bonus and fire all these people over here. Because that's the other thing that happened with Activision the other week. They fired a whole bunch of people and then gave himself a bonus. Good job firing people. Have a fucking $1 million bonus. It doesn't make any sense.
I got a great analogy, right?
Go for it.
It's like getting fit. You know, the executives are like the muscles that you need to put more mass into. And then the fat is all the workers that you need to get rid of. Yeah. So then you end up healthier and leaner and more happy and producing better.
You know, that's the kind of shitty analogy they probably use to make themselves feel better about what they're doing as well. We're getting rid of the fat, guys. Getting rid of the fat. We're getting rid of 350 fats with families.
The thing is, cutting staff is normally not the first solution to these issues. So in these situations, I think that's what you've got to think about as well, because obviously they're losing people that are like producing these things for them, but it is one of the quickest solutions, but it's not often the first solution that has been taken, but you don't hear about all the other steps that might have been taken. It's like, to me, it doesn't matter about whatever the hell Andrew Wilson's getting paid at this point. It's like there's so many other things in the works. It's not always just black and white. It's just the fact that this is the comparison that's happening. That's
exactly what you said is why we'll never agree on this subject, because you said it doesn't matter what Andrew Wilson's getting paid, whereas to me, it's everything about what Andrew Wilson and the rest of the members like that are getting paid. That's where everything is on for me, because you all look at it from a very outside, that's business, Dylan. That's just how it works, this sort of thing. Whereas my mind is 100% centered on, why does anyone need to be paid $1 million bonuses at all? Full stop. That's all I think. No one deserves that amount of money. No one needs that amount of money, right? And you'll be like, oh, is that the only time to think about it? No, actors get overpaid too, as far as I'm concerned. A bunch of other fucking people that don't need the amount of money. We're going to fuck the economy by overpaying a bunch of people in positions, and then we'll fuck the world up. All right? Take that. 1-2 punch. Mike Tyson, punch out. Take me, fight me. I feel like I need Nick on these episodes when we're talking about these subjects, because I feel like if anyone at Explosion Network will be on my side, potentially, it'll only be Nick.
All right, next time something like this happens, we'll be sure to get Nick on.
You're like, yeah, fuck these companies. You're right, Dylan. Thanks, Nick.
Oh, I'm fine. I have no opinion.
You let me down, Nick. All right, let's move on. So the other thing, I thought this was an interesting, weird story that's happened. So we need the Scott Pilgrim game back because A, it's great. I don't know if anyone here has played it. It came out many, many years ago. PS3 and Xbox, I think, and something else, I don't know. But also, apparently people keep harassing the people who made the soundtrack for that game on Twitter because they think they're the ones who caused it to get taken down. So the story comes from DualShockers. It says, the band responsible for Scott Pilgrim, the game's music, takes to Twitter against accusations that they caused the game's delisting. I don't know how you pronounce the fucking band. Anamaguchi? Sure. The American band behind the excellent soundtrack from Scott Pilgrim vs. World, the game, which is a title, but also, if you haven't, I listened to this fucking soundtrack for ages. The soundtrack for this game is better than the soundtrack for the movie. That's where they order for me. And I really like...
What, the original sound? The score?
For the original music for the game is better than the movie's soundtrack, I think. Just putting it out there. I'm not saying I dislike the movie soundtrack. I like it, but if I had to pick one above the other, this is it. So they've taken to Twitter to clear the air regarding their lack of involvement in getting Ubisoft developed and published title delisted from the digital marketplace. The band's official Twitter account released a recent status update regarding the situation, asking for Ubisoft and Universal Pictures to re-release the game so they would stop being, quote, falsely accused of removing it from the stores themselves. Yeah, so they tweeted out, can you guys, in brackets, Ubisoft, Universal Pics, figure out how to re-release the Scott Pilgrim game so people stop falsely accusing us of removing it from the stores ourselves? Gets kind of scary sometimes. Lol. Someone later in the thread replied and said, yeah, the common rumor that everyone thought was true until the band started speaking out openly that it wasn't, was that the game couldn't be re-released because of rights disputes with Anamaguchi, or however you say him, over the OST. And then the band replied and said, we've spoken openly about it since day one. Said we had anything to do with it. We had nothing to do with it being pulled. It's not like this is the first time addressing it by any means. Just surprising we're still getting hit up about it based on some wild rumor by some rando trying to start shit. So yeah, the game was delisted in 2014 with presumably contract issues with the publisher Ubisoft and the rights holder of the movie Universal Pictures. And it got taken down, and then Scott Pilgrim creator Brian Lee O'Malley apparently took to Twitter at the time in 2016 with him, and he said, "My number one goal in life is to get the Scott Pilgrim video game re-released. Give me time." And it's, of course, 3 years later, and the game's still not up on the store, so I don't think he's done too well with his mission. But yeah, it's just one of those funny stories. I'm like, the game has been off for so many years at this point. And the fact, the idea of someone out there so missing the Scott Pilgrim game or something that in May or whatever, February, January of 2019, they found the band's Twitter page and like tweeted at them something like, "Can you fucking guys get your shit sorted out so I can play my goddamn Scott Pilgrim game because I'm sick of your shit." It's like, fuck, it's been years. I nearly even forgot it got taken down until I saw the story pop out, and then it just made me want to play the game, and then I realized I couldn't play the game because it's got taken off the store. So all kinds of shit creek.
I assume you had it digitally on PS3. Couldn't you just re-download it, or that's under?
I actually didn't try, but I made the assumption that if it's not on the store and I've deleted it off my console, I won't be able to re-grab the data, even if you own it. This is that scary digital age, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Thing that everyone gets scared of.
Whatever the year I said, 2038.
Did you ever play it, Ash?
I think I played like the demo. I think it was a bit too hard for just one person. I think it was meant to be based multiplayer game.
Get good. I had no friends. I beat that shit several times. Get good.
Yep.
Hashtag. I'll talk about quitting Sekiro soon. But that, it's... yeah, so if you did play it, it was a Ubisoft title back in 2000. When did Scott Pilgrim go? I think it came out like 2010. I should look it up. Roughly around that time period. And it was basically like Rivers... 2010, cool. It was basically like River City Ransom, side-scrolling beat-em-up game. You could play as Scott Pilgrim. You played through the game story roughly. There were several bosses to fight. It was a lot of fun because obviously if you like Scott Pilgrim, the movie, or the graphic novels as well, it was really, really cool. It had this amazing soundtrack, of course, as we've seen by Anna Maguchi or whatever the hell the band's called. I wonder if the soundtrack still exists. I wonder if you can like find it on Spotify still or something like that. Or it becomes so interesting when rights holders for this sort of thing happen. I'm like, do they own the music, or did Ubisoft own the music once they made the music for it? Oh no, it's on here. Scott Pilgrim the game. Here you go. Let's get copyright striked on this. Yeah. That's too much, right? Copyright strike's over. Great soundtrack. You can listen to it on Spotify. You cannot play the game though, just to clarify. You can listen to it though. Cannot play the game. Yeah, later on they added DLC where you could play as Ramona Flowers as well. And then I was working on some other DLC and there's a whole kerfuffle where it kept getting pushed and pushed and pushed and they never actually released it. So everyone got shitty about that as well. I remember when it came out, everyone basically, all the IGN podcasts at the time when I was listening to those, wouldn't shut the fuck up about it, especially like Damon Hatfield and stuff was obsessed with the game when it came out for pretty much the rest of the year. And it's like, fuck, it could do with a PS4 or current generation port. And now that I've read this story about people starting missions to get the game ported, I've now joined their Reddit army and what have you to get the game ported, because you're right, everyone. We do need this game back. And they could port it fairly easy. It had a great art style. Yes, please, very much.
Yeah, so I'm seeing mixed reports of whether you can download it or not still. Someone on the Xbox 360 did, but someone on the PS3 didn't. So I would assume they'd still have the files there anyway. It seems like someone in licensing really screwed up. They should have like future-proofed, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird with tie-in games. There's not many tie-in games that you can still play from like previous generations as well, because I assume all the licenses for those expire as well. So
yeah, it's weird. Plus, this is early days, like 2010's fairly early in the like downloadable, smaller titles and stuff coming out. So they probably didn't think. I don't know. Like, it's one of those weird things.
Yeah, it's like, what's the Kevin Smith movie that's not on any streaming services? Because
is there a Kevin Smith movie that's not on any streaming services?
Yeah, because of the rights. Oh no, Dogma. You can't see it on any streaming services because of all the rights. There's no
Who owns
streaming.
all the rights?
No, there's no like a streaming option, so nobody can stream it because it wasn't a thing.
Oh, well, how come the rest? Like, how's that work out?
I don't know. No, I think it's because it was owned by multiple sectors or companies.
I've never heard of this story. I've never thought about it, I suppose. Interesting. Scott Pilgrim, you should go watch it, the movie, and then you should play the game when they re-release it, because I'm going to start a GoFundMe to get that shit ported. Next thing, we are getting rumors coming out that there may be 2 new Switch models being released later this year. One would be a transitional unit from a 3DS to a Switch kind of thing, and the other is apparently going to be more of a powerful upgrade for it. So, story comes from Press Start, who says, yesterday we posted about the fact that Wall Street Journal was reporting that 2 new Nintendo Switches were on their way this year, potentially. Eurogamer has confirmed these rumors and also spoken to sources close to Nintendo about what form factor they'll likely take, as well as who they'll appeal to. I believe is that word, but they've used the wrong word. I'm sorry, Shannon, you should fix that. Nintendo looks to be doing what they did with the Nintendo 3DS family at a similar point in the life cycle, where they went into the direction of cheaper 3DS, the 2DS, as well as the new 3DS XL. I fucking hate the names of all these things. So what it'll potentially be is one Switch that comes out, and it'll apparently be more kid-proof and friendly, a sturdier model, which would remove several features, I guess, potentially like gyroscope and touchscreen and several of these vibration, I guess. Yeah, so it's just more of like a screen and stuff. So that's a lot cheaper. Hand it to your kids, and it's not going to break very easy, because the current Switch, if you drop it, it's probably going to fucking break. And then the other one would be a more powerful Switch. So reports have suggested that the bump would be to that of the PS4 Pro or Xbox One level, which I find very hard to fucking believe. But sources close to Nintendo have told Eurogamer that's a similar bump from that of the 3DS to the new 3DS. This more powerful console won't remove TV screen docking, which makes it sound like it'll be a similar experience, but just a little bit more capable. So, going to upgrade to a more powerful Switch if one releases this year, Cherie?
I don't know. I only just got my Switch. Come on.
Yeah, but you didn't buy it, so.
I don't know. I think it's like, I understand the step up from the 3DS and the transition over to a Switch, but I find it a little bit odd. Like, I feel like they should really just be accepting the fact that they have technically made it just a handheld, and they should be just releasing another proper console. I mean,
you're wrong.
If they just admit that it's a console, they'll get eaten alive by Xbox and Sony. I think you put yourself in direct competition with them if you commit to just a console, whereas with the handheld console hybrid, they sort of distance themselves, and everybody needs to have a Switch and whatever console they have, I think.
I don't want the word handheld console to exist anymore, right? I only want hybrid consoles from now on. The Switch has introduced me to a new world, and if you want to try and say something's only a handheld, no sirree. The fucking 3DS needs to die. I'm sicker than doing Nintendo Directs and talking about 3DS games, because of course if you're watching it, I'm like, yeah, that looks cool. I'm not going to play it. I haven't done
one of those in ages.
Yeah, well, I think they're fine. That plus these rumors kind of suggest that they've kind of caught on to the fact that no one really cares about 3DS anymore, except for potentially, or mostly kids, I guess, is what they've gathered, if these are rumors are to be true, that kids are the only people still playing, and everyone else has moved on to Switches. But yeah, every time they show 3DS games, I'm like, yeah, cool. Is it on Switch too? Or no, okay, I'm not playing it then. I don't care. And I've got a fucking 3DS. I just don't want to use it. Why do I want to play that thing when I've got a Switch? Get out of here. I don't need that thing.
Yeah. yeah, this makes sense. The only thing that doesn't really make sense is how early into the life cycle it is. I mean, the console only came out 2017, like early 2017, so it's just hit 2 years that's been out, and now you want to put out another 2 separate models, including a more powerful one. It just seems a little bit odd. But like the article says, it makes sense to bring out a cheaper option with some more family-friendly games coming out later in the year. Like Pokemon and Animal Crossing potentially. So a definitely kid-friendly version would be very good. With like bumpers
I think
and like
the
inflatable thing, safety floaties around it. So
I think the price point and stuff like that for the younger one to switch to the 3DS too, that makes a lot more sense. My question is, there was already enough uproar about the price point for the Switch when it first came out. So what does the more powerful Switch actually look like price point wise? What's the selling point for people to literally switch from what they've got from what they've got to the more powerful version, like either straight away like they would from a PS4 to a PS4 Pro? A
4K.
lot of people will immediately switch over. Yeah, exactly. So that's what I would want to know is like, what are the selling points to move from what you've currently got to the better version?
It would be 1080p in handheld mode, not only 1080p in docked mode, because that's currently the thing where like games like Doom and Wolfenstein, which I haven't played, but I've heard, a read about, and people are like, yeah, they run fine if you're playing it docked, and they're okay then. They're in 1080p and they seem to run okay. But when you play those games in handheld mode, the 720p, they're very sluggish. The frame rate apparently drops quite low at certain points. So I could see an upgrade and a key selling point being like, all those games that really struggle when you're playing them in the handheld mode? Yeah, well, then they're not going to struggle so much now. Cool. More story.
Oh, they probably wouldn't use the word struggle.
Yeah, they probably would. But I could see that being a selling point, like enough.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a 4K console all of a sudden. So they're not going to upgrade much to do with the docked version, but if they added if the upgrades are mostly to do playing handheld, there would probably be a lot of selling points for people because a lot of people mostly play it handheld anyway, I guess.
Yeah. You just boost the battery life, add more internal storage, stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, I looked up just then because Nintendo releasing a new model of a Switch was bound to happen, really, because as much as they could be like, it's our console. No, it's not. It's their hybrid console. And they always release different versions of handheld games. It's just handheld consoles. It's how it works. So the 3DS was released in 2011. Nintendo 3DS XL was released in 2012. And then the new 3DS was released in 2014. So they released a new model the year after the 3DS, and then 2 years after that model, they released
they released
a
bigger model
with an analog stick. Yeah, well, they released a bigger screen, and it slightly increased like battery life and these sorts of things. That's what the XL had, and then they released the new 3DS, which was a significant upgrade. Some games you couldn't play on the old 3DS, they would say that you need the new 3DS to actually be able to play them, which was a thing not a lot of people realize for that, I guess. And then, of course, over the years, I've always had Game Boy, SP, and whatever else. So there's always been significant upgrades, I guess, and stuff. So it makes sense. It's Nintendo's thing. It's what they do. But yeah, I guess the question is, like, what are the features that make people want to buy the upgraded version? And I do feel like, yeah, if they're just like, hey, bigger battery life, 1080p on the go, that's all they really need, I think. That's all it really needs to be. It doesn't need to be much more than that. And the price point has to be the current price point, like what it is now.
It won't be. It won't be. And that's where the problem's going to be. So if it's not the current price point, is that enough? Like, are those things enough for you to just switch over?
Switch. I don't know. Probably. I don't know. It depends. It would all depend on like, especially if I could EB Games or somewhere had a nice like, you know, $2.99 plus trade your console in or something and upgrade. I'd probably do it then. You know. So.
What about
Wait, would you be able to transfer your stuff?
You can
so what
upload
about
to the cloud now and stuff. So yeah.
Okay, it's
What
not like the
about,
Wii U where everything was saved to the.
what about different playable games and things like that?
What do you mean?
Well, if you're talking about like upgrading things to be slightly more powerful, and that's the concept of the actual upgrade, then what if there were games that came out on the new console that you couldn't get on the current Switch?
Well, I don't think that would happen. It would just be that you could. It's because everything's already everything would already run fine and be playable, and you get your 1080p when docked. So the version I'm saying is you just get the 1080p on the go version. So it may run better, like as they do now. It's like the new Switch, maybe you can play Doom on it and it runs fine in handheld mode. The old Switch, you play Doom on it in handheld mode and it runs at 18 frames per second. You know, that's kind of what the world I'm looking at, I guess.
Yeah, no, what I'm saying is, how would you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean that's fine.
Yeah,
those games already run at 18 frames per second, so it's not like. So people living with that as it is, those people who want to play those sorts of games are just going to have to upgrade, I guess.
I'm saying if the games only came out on the new version and not on your current one, would you just switch?
There's no way that's going to happen.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
2 years into the life cycle, you're not going to split your market. That's just crazy.
For your console right as it's kind of sprouting and taking off. Yeah, no, that's a big old no-no. I think out of the two models though, the cheaper one, the transitional type one for kids and stuff is the one that makes the most sense, I think. A cheaper 3DS to be able to buy kids.
The other thing was
especially
the cheaper model wouldn't come with the dock was the other thing, so you'd only be able to play in handheld.
In handheld mode, yeah.
And
which is fine.
Joy-Cons would be non-removable was the other thing.
Yeah, but what works so well about it is there are already so many, like, for example, Rocket Mummy, right?
Yep.
I know at one stage, I know at one stage she said she gave one of her kids their Switch to play, and he broke some part of it, and they had to get it fixed, luckily, but like it survived or something like that. But imagine a world where the adults can keep their main Switch docked and played handheld if they want to, obviously, but they can make the OVR accounts, you know, family accounts or whatever, download the games onto them anyway, and then the kids can still play all the games. So you buy a secondary Switch, a cheaper secondary model Switch for your kids and stuff. You don't buy that solely. It's more like a stop fucking breaking my one.
Yeah.
Have this one over here. Yeah.
It's a kid version.
Yes. And I think that makes sense.
It's a occupy children Switch.
Yeah. Because most people have more than one Switch in their house. Like that's the stats, like I guess. Like most people who have a Switch, and if more than one person in the household is a gamer, they've got more than one Switch because like having one,
because sharing sucks.
Enough. Yeah, because sharing sucks, I guess. And more docks and stuff. So it's not, having a cheaper model does fit with their whole take it anywhere you go. Like they've got the family sharing on their
as a
handheld,
now, some might say.
Whatever else. Yeah, it's a handheld. Well, this would be a handheld, but it's a sub model. It's not like it's solely just a handheld. But the thing is, with this also, like in this scenario, it means that if the kids want to play a game on the big screen, then you give them the controller and they can break the controller, which is cheaper to replace. But then if the kids, you take them on a road trip, you give them their shitty hard brick Switch to take, and they can continue playing their game on that because they upload their save to the cloud off the console, the docked one, then they download it onto their thing, and off they go. You know, go little Jimmy, go.
My question will be, what are they going to call them? Because they can't really call it a Switch.
The Switch Wii.
Because it'd be like, it's technically Switch Mini, but it's not a Switch if you can't switch it between things.
They call it the bricks. The bricks. The bricks? The brick. They call it the brick. The non-Switch. They call it the Will Smith. They call it the Jada Pinkett Smith.
What?
Oh dear.
New Switch models coming this year, that's for sure. Talking about transitional periods and stuff, Professor Layton is apparently going to be coming over to the Switch because, of course, Professor Layton wants to come over to where all the 3DS games could be coming. So this is also a press start story. It says localization company G4F has seemingly leaked the fact that Nintendo DS game Professor Layton and the Curious Village is coming to Nintendo Switch. The puzzle-solving game featuring a professor and his apprentice was the first title in a long-standing series of Professor Layton games. A release date isn't known, but considering it's already been localized, you think that the announcement and a subsequent release is coming in the near future. I would expect this potentially to show up in the next Nintendo Direct whenever they randomly decide to announce that. If it's already been like localized and stuff like that. So, and I'm excited because I like them Professor Layton games. I played several of them on my 3DS. You know what the problem with those games was? I didn't like playing them on my 3DS, and I wish that was on any other platform.
Fucking hell.
You know, they came out on iOS Android last year.
Yeah, I did think about buying them too, but I was like, I remember staring and being like, oh, I don't really have time for this right now. Maybe down the line. I remember that's what I did for Ace Attorney as well. I was like, fuck these Ace Attorney shit on my DS. Get out of here. And then when Ace Attorney released the like all 6 games or whatever it was in a package a couple of years ago, I brought that shit on my iPhone. That's where I played the first 2 on my phone. That's right. Get out of here with you. I just they reached a certain point where I'm like, I'm so sick of playing my DS, 3DS. I'm getting sick of it. I don't like it. I got really annoyed with any sort of game I had to play on it. But yeah, Professor Layton is a really cool game. It's got this great animation style. It's got really cool puzzles. Of course, a lot of them, especially because this is the first game they were like heavily touchscreen based, using the stylus and all sorts of things like that. So I wonder how that would.
How would that work?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Switch has a.
Well, in handheld mode, it's fine, but when it's docked, you're kind of...
Then you'd have to use a shitty analog thing on the screen, I guess.
And sort of draw stuff.
To do stuff. Or the motion controls, because it has, like... That's how... When you try to play Captain Toad Treasure Tractor in docked mode, it's the worst fucking thing ever in the world, because you have to use the controller, like the Pro Controller or whatever, to try and... Or the Joy-Cons to try and, like, use motion controls to play the game. It's like, no, please, go away. Whereas if you're playing it in handheld, it feels like the way you should be actually playing it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I haven't played the mobile one, so I don't know exactly how they like ported it to one screen, because obviously the game was originally 2 screens, although there's never too much information.
You could just put
on
it side by
screen.
side, I guess.
No, but I don't think that's how it worked, because most of the time there was never really anything that interesting happening on the second screen unless you was actually doing a puzzle. Most of the time it would just be like, there's a map of where you are, and that's how most DS and 3DS games were. I also found it's like half the time that second screen was just secondary, just nothing important was really happening on it, I feel. So but yeah, Professor Layton, I'm excited. I'll get this 100% down. Please give it to me on the rightful the rightful platform, the Switch. Would anyone else be interested in playing some Professor Layton?
Yeah.
Has anyone not heard of Professor Layton?
No, I've heard of it.
I've heard of it. I haven't played it though.
Would you play Professor Layton? Do you want me to tell you about Professor Layton?
No, let's move on.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I think I can. I think I can have a look. I've
There's
heard
a
enough
side
to be
kit?
curious.
I find it interesting they're just doing the first one, not like
To
Ace
start with,
Attorney where
Ash.
they're
To
grouping
start
a bunch together.
To start with. I was looking up how many games there is because I wasn't sure. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 games. That's right. Professor Layton and the Curious Village. Professor Layton.
No.
And
No, we're not doing this.
Okay, it says Wikipedia says the main character in the Professor Layton games is Professor Herschel, in case you're wondering their first name. Layton, a renowned archaeologist and professor at Greshella University, as well as a polite and well-spoken gentleman, my lady. He is called to solve various mysteries in different places due to his connections to various people and his wide range of expertise. Professor Layton is always accompanied by his apprentice, Luke Triton, a cheerful and curious boy who brings a touch of humor to the story of Layton. According to Hino, I think that's the creator, Layton is partly inspired by the character Phoenix Wright of the Ace Attorney series. Waiting to improve upon what he saw as bad points in Phoenix's character, he developed Professor Layton. And I believe they did a crossover or something at some stage as well, unless I dreamed that. And if I did, it was a very good dream, because it's one of those dreams I've had where I believe it's reality at this stage. We should double check that.
No, there was a crossover with Phoenix Wright.
Okay, good. Thank you. Because I'm like, wow, if you're about to say, no, Dylan, that didn't happen, then I'm like, the last several years of my life, I've been going through my every day to day thinking they did a Professor Layton and Phoenix Wright crossover that never actually happened. Okay, good. I feel better now. Okay, let's talk about what we've been playing. All right, so I played Sekiro Shadows Die more than once this past week. I played it for a total of 10 hours-ish, roughly, something like that. And then I decided I was done with the game and I've put it away and I'm not playing it anymore.
Jeez,
if you've been following my Twitter, it's been an up and down story that everyone's kind of followed along with me. I feel like I put a nice full stop on it because I turned my feelings into an actual fucking video and article, which of course you can find in the show notes down below or explosionnetwork.com, where I talk about exactly why I decided to stop. And it basically boils down to, I was like, to get good at this game and finish it, I'm going to have to spend a lot of fucking time. And a lot of that time is going to have to be spent achieving nothing. So I'm going to spend hours playing it, not beating anything, but slowly getting better at the game. And eventually I'll beat it, sure. But then I had to think, do I want to actually spend hours just practicing something, like, do I want to go through what this game is going to have to put me through to be able to get good at it? And I decided I just didn't want to have the time for it. I didn't want to do it. That doesn't mean I'll never come back to it. Maybe in the future I'll come back to it because I do like the game. It's not that I dislike the game. It's just I don't want to deal with it shit. All right? Don't want to deal with it shit. Anyone got questions about Sekiro?
What did you like about it?
I suppose that's a good question, yeah. Well, I mean, it's a Soulsborne game, right? So it's FromSoft, which means it does give you a level of achievement. Like, you feel good when you overcome things. That's what those games do correctly, I suppose. It's a really pretty looking game. It's got a really cool looking world. I would prefer Bloodborne because I'm just more into that like gothic horror shit that Bloodborne had going for it, and that's probably why Bloodborne's one of my favorite games. I love that game. But yeah, like shinobis and samurais and whatever the fuck else is going, and some ghouly monsters and whatever else you have in this one as well. It's not fully like without the fantasy elements. There are a level of fantasy elements to it as well. So it looks nice and stuff. It plays really well. It plays like it feels like a Soulsborne game in some elements, but then at the same time it's nothing like it, which is a weird thing to say, of course. But like you start walking around the world and stuff, you're like, okay, it kind of feels similar. But then the second you get into combat, you basically die if you try to play it like Bloodborne or Demon Souls or Dark Souls, because those games revolved somewhat around countering and parrying, but often about being able to dodge and roll at the right time. This game is more about having you constantly locked in a samurai, like proper, like swords clanging constantly battle. So you pretty much need to be standing at your enemy's toes at all points, and you need to get good at parrying every single one of their attacks. Because the game is less about actually taking down your enemy's health, more so about building up their... Fuck, I can't remember. There's a bar. I can't remember the name of the bar, but there's a bar that appears above enemies' heads that builds up as you both attack them and also whenever you parry one of their attacks. And when it builds up, it's basically like you can break through their defenses and do a lethal strike on them. So to normal enemies, if you build that bar up, you'll do a lethal strike and they'll die. For bosses, they have little red dots above their health that tells you how many lethal strikes it'll take to kill them, and below that it has a health bar. And what you quickly learn in the game is that you should just ignore the health bar because it doesn't really mean shit, and what you got to focus on is building up the bar that can lead you to be able to do a lethal strike. And then most bosses throughout the game have 2 lethal strikes before you'll be able to kill them. What this does mean is that if you suck at countering in games, like that very precise timing to be able to pull off countering and stuff, you'll really struggle with this game because it's really reliant on, especially a lot of enemies like just attack you so fucking fast that you have to be so quick on that L1 trigger finger or whatever it is on Xbox and whatever else, but that so quick on that deflect button to be able to get away with it and strike them down. And also enemies in this hit harder than any other Souls game or Bloodborne as far as I'm concerned. Like you'll just be walking through them, and I was talking about this with Nick before we recorded What Do You Want to Watch yesterday. Because he's playing it as well, and he's like, fuck, they hurt, everything hurts so much harder than any of the other games. I'm like, yeah, I know. And we both agreed that it's just somewhat ridiculous that you can just be walking around casually and then any old random enemy could just like kind of come up to you, hit you once, and you've lost like half your HP. It's like, fucking hell, like I didn't see you, and now I'm pretty much fucked to even attempt this boss fight that I was thinking about. I might as well just head back. There's also the stealth element, which is there, like it works to an extent, but there's like not much options and variety for stealth. Like you can creep up behind people and these sorts of things, but it's not like a hardcore stealth game where you can hide bodies and anything like that. You can just do stealth attacks and jump down on top of people and whatever else. But yeah, I mean, it's a great game. It's not that I dislike the game. I just chose to not waste my time. And waste is a weird word, I suppose. I just chose for my own sanity that I just didn't have time for it anymore.
You're just waiting for another lull before you get back into it, maybe.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, how many more hours? You know how, like, sometimes with these types of games, you need to play, like, a certain period of time or, like, bulk together or whatever until you hit, like, a sweet spot and then you found your rhythm and you've passed the point of where it's frustrating and then it actually starts to become a bit more enjoyable. How many more hours do you reckon you would have needed to play to get to that point?
As far as I could gather, I was pretty much at like one of the towards like what a lot of people would call a midpoint boss. So I mean, I feel like I kind of had everything understood at that point. The hardest point in the game, like the biggest hurdle, was definitely the first couple of hours. So I was past that point because the game introduces and this is no different than Bloodborne, because Bloodborne, you start the game and you walk around a corner and something kills you and you're like, oh fuck, like what do I do? How do I survive? And that game is very much the same of just for the first couple hours, just fucking learn how to play this game or you're just going to have a terrible time. And Sekiro does something similar where when you start the game, they chuck a mini boss at you. This is the other thing this game does weird compared to all the Soulsborne games. It has bosses like those games, like big eventful bosses that you can tell are the main bosses, but then it constantly has mini bosses that you might not even tell are a boss fight until you kind of approach the enemy and you'll think, oh, it's just a random samurai. Like, surely that's just a normal soldier. And then when you get really close to him, all of a sudden it comes up with like a boss bar, health bar, and then you're fighting them. And you're like, oh, fuck. But so this game has a shit ton of mini bosses. Too many, actually, if you ask me. Too many fucking mini bosses. But there's one like really early in the game, like pretty much 2 minutes down the road from where you start. So you walk up to it and it's like, hey, this is how you parry. It gives you all the tutorials that pop up on screen. It's like you have to do it at this timing. If you see a strike coming from side, you have to jump to be able to dodge it. If you see him attempt to attack you from overhead, roll out of the way. It's like, here's all these things you need to do. Now learn them all. And then I died 10 times in a row on that before I beat it. And then after that, I was like, okay, at least I've kind of got the systems down. There was probably another boss after that where I had to beat that before I finally felt like, okay, I kind of understand how I'm playing this game now. Because I was still trying to play it like Bloodborne, where I was constantly rolling out of the way and these sorts of things. And then it got to a point where I was like, I like parried, like some boss was attacking me. It was like swing. And I parried, and then knocked him back and killed them. And I was like, yeah, that felt cool. But I parried them all. Not once did my brain go back to the Bloodborne thing of roll out of the way. It was like, no, just stand there and parry it. So it wasn't like I didn't understand the system, but the thing is, you're still constantly having to kind of learn things, obviously, because bosses are like one of the bosses I was fighting at the time. It's without spoilers. It's just like it brings in a bunch of shit that you have to deal with. That's like basically insta kills you, and I'm like, why is this happening? What is my life right now? So I don't think it was that. It was just, and I looked up the final boss fight. And I'm like, no, I cannot imagine I would ever do that. Maybe if I played it and by the time I got to the final boss fight, obviously I'd be a lot better at the game and then maybe it wouldn't be as threatening. But watching the final boss fight, I was like, I cannot imagine how I would ever do this. I just don't know. But then I also thought, because like I've got the platinum in Bloodborne, right? And obviously not an easy thing to get. But also when I did that, I wasn't doing the explosion network or something, you know, like I could spend all of my free time just playing Bloodborne when I was into it. And I pretty much went hard on Bloodborne for like a month or 2 months straight to 100% the game and its DLC.
Well, we're sorry that was such an inconvenience to you.
Yeah, but that is just one of the things. It's like, I don't have a month. I can't afford to just play Sekiro for a month. You know, I've got other games I need to be able to play and do. Even does that make sense? Does it make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it depends like what mood you're in too. Like maybe you're just not in the space at the moment to even want to
die
be bothered
repeatedly
with the time.
Well,
and,
the problem also is with these types of games, you can't like play them with other things. You kind of just need to be playing them constantly to build up that muscle memory for the game's controls. You can't be like switching them in and out or like once a week or something like that because you constantly kind of forget what you're doing, what the controls are. You just need to constantly be committed to it. So that's also a problem. And then it's like, okay, I've got an hour before work. I'll play a game. Let's play an hour of Sekiro before work and just die fucking 50 times in a row and achieve nothing before work. That doesn't sound like super great to me at the moment.
Sounds fun.
No, doesn't. Doesn't at all. Doesn't sound fun at all. So, yeah, I think I have a bunch of other problems I don't really think I need to go over because they're like very niche Dark Souls type things that I think they need to update or should have changed for the game. And also, if you watch my video, as I talked about before, or read the article, another thing I had a problem with is I'm just like, after playing Celeste, which is my point I bring up in that video, where Celeste is like this hard platformer, but it also had a bunch of options to make the game basically, it had a bunch of options where you could just make it so you couldn't die, full stop. But it had those options in there, and it was really nice because then it let people be like, hey, if you want to play it at its default difficulty, you can, and that's up to you. And you're like, you can play it at whatever level you feel like you need to be able to have fun with the game and have enough difficulty that works for you. Like you could add yourself a little bit extra health or whatever. And I think after that, I kind of just look at these games now and I'm like there's nothing. It is literally just get good or get fucked. Like there's no way around it.
The other question I had was the demo that you played at PAX last year. Was that towards the beginning of the game or had you not even hit that section yet?
It's like an hour in, I guess. But the enemies were in different spots and stuff like that. Like the big giant thing that you face in that square in the demo, that was at PAX, that's not there in the full game.
Yeah.
That's it's before that area actually. And I beat that thing. So I beat the thing that was at PAX. That's done. So at least I got that out of the way. But the enemies, all the other enemies, they move out of the way and all those sorts of things. So
it'll be interesting to see like what Nick thinks of it.
Well, today we record as Viewing Gods, and he's like, I know what I'm going to do today. I'm like, are you going to play Sekiro? He's like, I don't know if I can be bothered with that. Like, he was feeling, without speaking for him, it sounded, when talking to him, he was feeling somewhat similar to me, where he's just like, I don't know if I can be bothered getting good at this game. I think also that's the kind of thing, it's like, with Bloodborne, because I was more into the lore and the world and stuff, and one of my also bigger problems with Sekiro is there's no way to attempt to make it easy with you with grinding. So there were several times in Bloodborne where I'd die a bunch of times on a boss, and I'd go to bed and be like, oh, fuck that fucking game. It's fucking bullshit. Like, and I'd go to bed sometimes after playing it and be like, I don't know if I can beat that boss. Like, it just seems too hard. Like, and especially if I'd get it down to the sliverest tiny bit of health, and I'd be like, fuck, like, if only I had a little bit more health. But then I could wake up the next morning and I could spend an hour walking around just killing random enemies, building up a bunch of souls, and then take them back and level up my health a tiny bit. Like, because that game actually had an RPG system in it. And then I could go back to the boss with the tiniest little bit of more health or the tiniest little bit more of attack damage or something like that. And that's all I needed to overcome it. Like, Dark Souls, Demon Souls, and Bloodborne all have RPG elements that let you grind somewhat to be able to make the game easier. It still means that you need to be able to dodge and stuff because enemies do so much damage that if you're getting hit constantly, you're still going to die pretty fucking fast. But you can grind a little bit to ease the game. But then, of course, you see people on Twitch this past week who beat the game without ever leveling up or getting hit once. So the game has not an easy mode, but the ability to make it easier. Sekiro lacks any RPG elements. So if you're stuck on a boss, there's no, I'll go farm up a level. Hopefully that'll get me a little bit more so I can help me a little bit here. It's just, you need to just keep trying. There's no other option. So it's like, if you got sick of a boss in Demon Souls, Bloodborne, Dark Souls, but you still wanted to keep playing the game but not fighting the boss, you could go do other things and just grind up enemies for an hour and then come back to the boss refreshed, kind of. No choices here. Get good or get fucked. I'm glad people are enjoying it. I think if I was to chuck a score off the top of my head, even though I've got my problems, I'd probably give it like an 8.5 or something. For the little nitpicky things I have, I've seen a lot of, most outlets are giving it like 9s or 10s and stuff, and I'm like, that's fine. I get it. That's fine. It's not like I hate that's the thing. I don't hate the game. I hate the player, not the game, as the kids say. All right. The other thing that came out this week that I've only played really is Battlefield 5 released its Battle Royale mode finally. So I decided I'll buy Battlefield 5.
What's it called?
What, Battlefield 5?
The Battle Royale mode.
Oh, Firestorm?
Firestorm.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, Firestorm.
Sounds like a Transformer or a...
So they had Battlefield 5 on sale on the PlayStation Store for like $40. So I was like, yeah, okay. It's time. Let's do this. Let's find out what this is all about. Because we're going to cover all Battle Royale modes here. Need to keep everyone up to date. Played a couple rounds. It feels like Battlefield in a Battle Royale mode. Woo, who'd have thought that would happen? Crazy, right? Which is like a plus and a negative. They some elements of it, like the gun combat, the world, the overall sound design in the Battlefield games are much better than all the other Battle Royales, I think. Like, Battlefield really gets the sound and immersion down. That's one of the things they've always kind of done better than any other thing. The map is fucking huge. It's the biggest Battle Royale map. It's quite ridiculous. It's so huge that the starting circle that you land in will never give you the option to land on the full map. Like, it's always going to have an area that's already engulfed in flame when you start, because that's kind of how big the map is. And then the fire of the mode, which is called Firestorm, is also really cool. It's probably a lot better than all the other ones that I've put a lot of time into. So Call of Duty Blackout, and then of course Apex, which I play a lot at the moment as well. Both of those games just had it's just a barrier. You're running behind. In Apex, it's an orange barrier that when you're behind, it starts doing damage to you, but that's all it is. In Call of Duty, it was the same thing. It was like a blue barrier or whatever. In Blackout, that comes past you start taking damage. Fortnite, it's the same. PUBG, it was the same. It was just a wall. In Firestorm, though, it is actually a giant engulfing fire that's moving in constantly around the map, and it sounds really cool. When you're really close to it, the screen will all get all fired up and like your vision and stuff like that, because you're actually near a giant fire. And then as it moves in, it's really fun to watch. The first 2 matches I did, I just would constantly stay really close to the fire because I was just following it in, because I wanted to see how it cause destruction, because if you're really close to a bunch of buildings and stuff, you can actually just watch it come in, and as the fire engulfs it, the buildings will kind of collapse and go into it. When the fire goes over a lake, little bits of fire kind of spread a little bit on top of it, like it's a real fire and these sorts of things. So I think that's just makes it a much more interesting and volatile like thing that's coming in, more so than just here's a barrier that does damage. When
does the world get affected by the fire? Like, does it, like buildings burning or stuff, trees catch on fire?
Well, yeah, the stuff that's behind it,
okay.
Like, yeah, so that works, and that's why when you're close to it, it's no different than if it was near fire anywhere else in the world that was caused. It's like your screen gets that fire vision that first person shooters have when you're standing near fire.
Is it really smoky by the area?
No, I don't think so. Maybe in certain areas, not that I've come across. I suppose they can't go too hard.
Do you have to have oxygen tanks in case you get smoke inhalation?
Not that I've found, but maybe they should add that in.
They should add that in, yeah. Can you become a firefighter and fight the fire back?
Maybe there's some costumes you can unlock. I don't know. But it's a very big fire, I'll have you know. It's going to require a lot of work. So the other thing for this Battle Royale mode that others don't really, like Call of Duty and Apex don't have, is vehicles, of course. So you can unlock the ability to call in like airstrikes and stuff, depending on like random things will happen on the map, whether it'll come up like positions A, B, and C, and then you can go there and kind of claim those points and fight off people who come in to claim them as well. And if you manage to do that, you can get a bunch of loot from that. There's like a giant tanker, like a underground section that I managed to find. I dropped right next to it on my first game somehow, that you see in the original trailer, where you have to stand next to it and for like a minute hold down square on a button, and it makes a constantly round like nah, 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 that everyone, of course, around you will be able to hear. And you have to do that for 2 doors, but if you manage to get them both open without anyone coming and killing you, which miraculously never happened to me, then you get inside of a tank and go ham using that tank. People do have like anti-tank weaponry, but it's like rare to find, obviously, so you're not going to die too fast, especially early in the game if you manage to get one. There's jet skis, shooty things, and whatever else. There's a whole heap. There's a whole heap of weaponry on cars and stuff. And like Call of Duty has had cars and bikes, but they've only recently added a vehicle that actually has like a turret gun attached to it. So for most of the part, it's just been like ATVs and stuff. But this is more like your proper artillery-based vehicles like tanks and stuff. Also, because the map's a lot bigger and stuff, it's got that thing of Battlefield where a lot of the combat's taking place over wider ranges of area, especially compared to like most people these days are playing Apex, which is very close quarters, I guess, for the most part, or like medium to close quarters. It's never usually long range. I don't find myself picking up a sniper in that game at all, whereas every match I played of Battlefield so far, I was picking up a sniper as one of my 3 weapons because it felt necessary to always kind of have that long distance. But yeah, the only negative for it, and the thing I don't understand for the mode, is they took one thing that's kind of very Battlefield out of the mode, which doesn't make any sense to me because you kind of need to do something to make yourself stand out these days. And they took out all of the Battlefield class specific things, which is that's a very Battlefield thing, of course, from all the games. They're known for having classes, the medic, the specialist, the assault class, whatever. They took all of those classes out and you just drop in as a random person. It doesn't make any difference. And I'm like, why? Why wouldn't you keep the class systems in? Maybe they took them out because they couldn't balance them all or something in this mode. But I'm like, if fucking Apex has managed to balance X amount of different hero-based characters, then you can manage to balance different class-based characters. Maybe the classes had different items they could find in the world to pick up, like the medic could find med packs, the specialist could find ammo packs. I don't know, but I'm just like, it just feels very weird to take one very key element of Battlefield out of its Battle Royale mode. And it makes it very obvious to constantly tell you too when the game's loading in. And you can still pick between every different class, but it just has a message on the screen at all points in time telling you, hey, this only affects what you look like. It doesn't make a difference. I'm like, yeah, cool. Glad to know. Thank you. In case I didn't know. It's great. Ash, as the superstar Battle Royale player of the Explosion Network, what do you think about what I'm telling you? What do you hear when I'm putting you down? What do you got going on?
I mean, it seems fine. It sounds a lot like Call of Duty, obviously. What I need to know is, do you ever fuse with another person and become a superpowered, nuclear-powered superhero?
What?
Do you ever fuse with another person and become a nuclear-powered superhero?
No, why would that be?
No, this DC Comics tie-in is a terrible agreement. They've made a mistake adding, taking the name from the DC superhero character.
I get it. Okay, I get it. Very, very good. Hard.
I knew the name sounded familiar.
Yeah. Did you Google it literally then?
Yeah.
Like,
I'm like,
what is Firestorm?
Is there a transformer called Firestorm? No.
Fucking hell. I think the last thing I'll say for it is that a lot of people, I don't like this mentality of constantly there can only be one Battle Royale. Like there can only ever be one or two maybe, and the rest have to die. Like we can't live in a world where games can just have Battle Royale modes, because I don't think Battle Royale modes are going to die. It's basically like back in the day when everyone was running around playing Team Deathmatch on Quake and whatever else, and then another game came out and put Team Deathmatch in it, and they're like, oh no, can't do that. And now these days, of course, any multiplayer game has fucking Team Deathmatch. It's the exact same thing. I'm like, it's just a new mode or genre or whatever that's happened to be invented in the last couple of years. And now games going forth, most first-person shooters and stuff, I presume, are going to have Battle Royale modes for the foreseeable future. It's just the world we live in. But also, we've got Apex, I play a lot of. That feels nothing like Battlefield, which I've just tried out. And Battlefield feels nothing like Call of Duty, which I played a lot of. And Call of Duty feels nothing like Apex, which I also played a lot of. So although I think from the outset, if you've never played them, you could be like, but Dylan, they're all just first-person shooters. How are they any different? But when you play them, there is enough mechanically different about all of them that they all feel very different. Like, Apex is the one I enjoy the most out of all of them. Ash is like, yeah, man, I'm over here nearly hitting level 50 with pro.
As soon as you start getting good at it, get the wins.
It's a funny though, because when I play Apex, I feel like that's the one where I'm actually trying to get good at it, right? Sometimes I run around a bit silly, but for the most part, I am actually trying, right? Most of the time, whenever I play Call of Duty, I never really was like, I want to get good at this game. And I think part of that thing is because Call of Duty doesn't have, like, it never had a like progression system built into the game at all that really encouraged you trying to get good at it. There was no like leveling up or anything really built into it or anything like that. It was just like
there was a little bit, wasn't there? You can unlock new skins.
Not really. There was like,
thing.
It's like most of the stuff you unlocked, you'd have to pay real world money and stuff like that. You'd never end a game and be like, yeah, look at all the experience points I got. Whereas Apex, obviously, you're leveling up, you're unlocking new gear, you're unlocking new weapon skins, etc. at all points in time. Leveling up, they've just added the battle pass, which me and Ash both brought into the battle pass because we're Apex legends.
Yeah,
got to hit that.
EA needs our money.
They do need our money. That's a true fact at this point. And then Battlefield also, I'll get one thing that Battlefield was doing that I enjoyed is because I hadn't played the game at all before and I just jumped straight into the Firestorm mode, I was getting a lot of level up shit happening very fast. I'm like, holy shit, this Battle Royale mode has a lot of leveling up happening. But then I realized what it is. It's their overall multiplayer stuff that's leveling up. So your guns level up as you play, your class levels up as you play, even though the class you pick in Firestorm doesn't matter, but you can still level it up as you play it. It's fucking weird. But you'll level up the guns and everything as you're playing. So it's like a cross-progressional system across all of its other multiplayer modes and these sorts of things. So I assume that Firestorm has an audience, and there's people out there that prefer the Battlefield game, the longer range combat, the tanks, etc., and they're going to enjoy that mode, and it's going to be great. And I'll probably jump back in and play a little bit more. And I was enjoying it. It feels so much different to the other two, but it's just like Apex is better, I guess. It's for me, it's like what I would prefer to be playing if I'm going to play a Battle Royale. And Call of Duty exists to me as this more just arcadey Battle Royale. It's just kind of I'll just run around and do fucking stupid things and try and land on top of people's faces and knife them and whatever. It's Call of Duty. Who knows what's going on? It's meant to be ridiculous. It's a fucking Michael Bay movie in a video game.
Apple Arcade is like the perfect avenue for expanding creativity.
For us, it was like, oh, finally someone who gets it.
Apple Arcade was revealed this past week as a subscription service that will apparently include many games, 100 plus or something like that was the The stats are throwing out. It's going to be a curated selection of games, whatever that means. And as Apple has promised that it won't include any ads in them or paid services, pay to win type stuff or whatever else that most mobile games are kind of known for, I guess, to a point. So if you look through, going to go over first what they've got on the apple.com / apple-arcade, sure. It says, play over 100 groundbreaking new games where storytelling and design are pushed further than ever before, all in a gaming service unlike any other. Apple Arcade hits the App Store later this year. Let's play. And then scroll down further through Apple's very weird and convoluted fucking website. Apple has joined forces with some of the world's most innovative games developers to push the boundaries of what's possible. We're working closely with these visionaries to help them realize the games of their dreams and yours. And then introduces you to a whole bunch of games here, the ones they were kind of showboating the most during the press thing, live show, whatever the hell, where they announced a whole bunch of other stuff early in the week. This was kind of long rumored, I guess, for a point. Like we were hearing rumblings about this for the last couple of months from a lot of different places, and it pretty much was all but confirmed to be true when Apple walked out on stage and said, "Hey, it's a thing that we're happening," and everyone was like, "Yeah, we kind of expected to see that happening." So The Verge has wrote up an article about it, verge.com. Says it's a subscription service that gets users access to a large library of games for a monthly fee, playable across iOS, Mac, and Apple TV. As the App Store and other mobile markets have become dominated by free-to-play games, often at the expense of so-called premium titles, this presents a potential solution. Paid games are often critically acclaimed and beloved by the people who play them, but competing with free is hard. So even the best of the games only have reached a smaller audience, Apple said when announcing its new service. So kind of what they walked out on stage and was like, hey, you know Florence? That was a game that people paid for last year and it's gone on to win a bunch of awards. But it was hard for people to discover that game when it released, and the only reason most people heard about it was, of course, because it started getting good press, good reviews, and it kind of tumbled, and that's how that game managed to do so well, I believe. But when it released, if you kind of looked on the App Store, it's kind of just like, it's surrounded by shit, really. There's a lot of shit there's a lot of crappy mobile games. There's no way you can argue about that. There's just crap everywhere. And to find the ones that actually come out that are actually good games amongst the crap is often like 9 parts of the challenge. So they're kind of walking out and saying, well, we're going to help with that issue. We're not going to take the crap off our store because we still need those people's money. We still need those people's money, so we're going to leave that there. But what we're going to do is we're going to let you pay us to get rid of the crap for you. And we'll curate the games into a bunch of ones that are actually quote unquote proper games, and we'll let you have a look at them. The article continues and says, there's still not much we don't know about Apple Arcade, including how much it will cost, and perhaps more crucially, how Apple will be splitting the revenue with developers. It says, I spoke to nearly a dozen mobile game developers and publishers after yesterday's announcement, and I was able to discuss specifics at this time. Although there was stories coming out after the fact that apparently the story is that Apple will be splitting it on time spent playing the games, not by per play, which is something we'll get into in a second because it's obviously quite interesting and I'm not the biggest fan of it. We do know that Apple will be helping fund the development of some of these games in some way and has been able to lure big names like Final Fantasy Mastermind, Nobu Sagagachi, and sim creator Will Wright. Meanwhile, the teams behind App Store hits like Monument Valley, Florence, and Alto's Adventure are all on board as well. And they also showed I can't remember how many minutes it was, probably like 5 minutes, like the movie one, but a several minute long trailer thing which they stopped and it's got dev interviews with a bunch of these people talking about the games, these sorts of things. It was a lot more interesting compared to the fucking J.J. Abrams.
Oh, so much better. At least they actually showed footage of stuff and with context.
Yes, it didn't seem like a cheap like we're pushing our like, oh, movies are great things. Anyway, it was just like, we're talking to like games, we're making them. So Ash, what did you think of Apple's reveal here?
It's interesting. I mean, it's good for smaller indie games, which is what they're pushing to have a platform and to sort of had to definitely get their game out. like to have a budget and sort of set their costs and that sort of thing. It's interesting how I guess they're going to have to all work on mobile platforms and then also on PC or Mac technically. So your game will have to work in both ways, which is fine. The play to based on time, that's an interesting one because obviously that makes shorter experiences.
What
likely
that would
to get
mean
revenue.
is something like Florence, which was highly acclaimed, of course, but only took an hour to beat, which could potentially get a lot less money.
Then something where you has more replayability.
Yeah,
it could
and
be
then
a percentage of time of the game.
what do you mean?
Like it could be worked, like, you know, if Florence is 100%, but it's only, you know, it's not a very long game. And then you've got another game, it could be percentage of that time that it would take to play the game.
I don't like
Maybe it's
either
worked
route.
off that.
No.
I don't like either. I like the way that they apparently do PlayStation Plus and Xbox Game Pass, which is that. So, of course, all these deals are never like open. Like no one really knows how these Xbox Game Pass, Games for Gold, PlayStation Plus, etc. These deals work. But the story is that, say, they put 3 games up on Game Pass, PlayStation Plus. If you download them all, you're actually helping out the devs because they get paid per download, even if you never play the game. So as long as you're constantly downloading the game, then it's ticking a box and they're getting paid more for the service. That's how these things apparently work. My biggest problem with having it be, hey, you get paid more the longer people play a game, then it forces developers into a cycle of having to make games that are designed around long playtime rather than good experiences, stories, or whatever the fuck they actually want to make. It forces them to probably try and make games in certain ways to just try and make more money, which is a big no to me. I don't like that at all. So, but also they've, I think, coming out and saying they're going to have 100 plus exclusive games on launch is obviously a ridiculous number. I don't know what their word of exclusive means though, is the other thing. Like,
It seems
exclusive,
to be mobile exclusive.
yeah,
Because
exactly.
they showed what was it?
I can't remember the one they showed
Overland.
at the
Overland, which
from
was
the
shown
Switch
off
thing
at the Nindies event like a week ago.
a week before. Yeah,
And then they had that bike musical one that they showed at another Switch event ages ago.
Yeah.
Like,
So I'm
yeah.
taking it as iOS exclusive compared to it'll never come to Android stores. It's
Yeah.
basically what I'm taking it as, which is a big hit, I suppose, in the mobile market. It's
I guess.
but they don't need to fight the PS4. That's not really
No.
what they're trying to fight. They can try and fight Google and Android and what, you know, the Play Store and whatever else. That makes sense. They're fighting within arm's reach then, and that works. I like mobile games, of course. You know, like I play my fair share of mobile games. So the idea of 100 plus new ones coming that are actually going to be
Good.
quote unquote proper games or however you want it, good. That's exciting. So I'm on board. What do you reckon, Cherie, about the whole reveal and everything?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I'm really interested. I think it's obviously very smart for them to expand into Apple TV, to do it that way, because it means not only is it just mobile, it's basically their own option of a console subscription service, which makes it playable not just for mobile devices but also on your TV like any other console. So I find that part really interesting too. It opens up a completely different realm. And yeah, I think it's great. I mean, who knows what the cost is going to be, how everything's going to be divvied up, but I think it's definitely a very interesting move on Apple's part. And yeah, I mean, I was reading too that it looks like the Apple Arcade is going to be a separate section and subscription service, so that you're still going to be able to buy those individual games that are on that service as a normal cost, but then also as Apple Arcade if you wanted to. So it's there's still the options to get it as an Apple Arcade subscription service, as well as just paying the full price for just the game. which I think is also beneficial to devs.
They're apparently adding Apple TV into smart TVs in the future, or sometime near future. So that also potentially means that.
But then, how do you play those games?
With your exactly, that's I
With your
don't know how
remote?
that works, but yeah. Look. There's like some of the ones I've already played on my Apple TV, like Crossy Road, for example. I've played on my Apple TV. Because there's not many, not all games that you could buy currently would work on Apple TV, only some of them. But Crossy Road works on Apple TV. And I did play that with the Apple TV remote, and it was just a simple, because the Apple TV remote has a touchpad on the top of it. So I was just swiping left, right, up, down to make the character crossing.
Yeah. Well, it could either be like they might change the remote as an example, or you might be able to sync up through your phone somehow. My other question is like, how is this going to affect battery life for devices?
No different than if you're playing any
if you're playing any
game.
game. Yeah.
It's not going to be
Yeah,
constantly
I guess
running in
so,
the
but-
background. Well, you'd hope not. That'd be weird. Like when you see the other thing that interests me, has me questioning the most, is they're like says it's going to curate the games or whatever for you based on what you've already played and stuff. That's going to be in the part of the subscription. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I mean, could potentially someone else I know be subscribed to the service? They get a game in their monthly thing, and I'm like, I want that game, but it didn't give me that game, and then I just know
No,
way for me to
it'll
switch
be
it
like
out.
it recommends. It's like anything.
Okay, I hope so. I was like, please no. That'd be locking me out of random things. That'd be quite weird. I was quickly seeing, because I'm like, have they announced there's any controller or anything yet? And I'm like, no, that's not. I mean, Apple TV can use. Apparently, it says there's a thing here that says Apple TV can use a lot of game controllers. So there must be a lot of third-party ones that are able to hook up with it so far, according to my quick Google search.
Do you have to buy a third-party controller?
Probably, maybe.
Or,
I mean,
or
maybe they'll.
connect your PS4 controller with the USB
Yeah,
cord. Yeah.
if it works, I guess, sure. But a lot of the games that they shown during the thing, like I was down, so obviously the ones like Overland that we talked about just before, we know that's coming to Switch and whatever else, I don't really know, Switch and something, maybe PC, I guess. So for games like that, I'm not going to play it on my phone over something else. But a bunch of these games Apple has helped fund, so then they're definitely going to be exclusives to, they'll be actually iPhone exclusive. A bunch of these ones, including I think the one from the Final Fantasy creator was like an exclusive, like they help fund that and whatever else. I mean, Apple's got money to throw around into this, especially if they're going to launch it. They might as well throw a bunch of money around into it and see what comes of it. Obviously I'm the only person here with an iPhone is the thing. Like, so it's hard to
Yeah.
for you to somewhat be like care, I guess, to a degree. Like, has any of this made you go, oh, I wish I had an iPhone? Or well, I suppose the bigger question is, could there ever get to a stage where there's so many great games and stuff on this platform that would actually make you want to switch phone, potentially? Could that happen? And what would cause that to happen?
That is a possibility.
Okay. But
It is
what would
possible.
it take? Would it be like one big game, or
It would have to be a
couple
lot of
games, or-
good games.
yeah?
And then, just, one phone contract cycle, and then you can go back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's true. Would you ever?
Or you just buy an iPad.
That's a lot more expensive. I mean, you can, sure.
Yeah.
Would you ever consider switching phones potentially, Cherie?
I don't know. I think it depends what's on offer, but I mean, I think the fact that it's on Apple TV, it depends how you want to play the game primarily, first of all. Otherwise, if it's a good enough service and you like it enough and you like enough games on it, then you're probably going to enjoy just playing it on Apple TV anyway. You don't need to have that to have Apple TV, so
I
that
guess.
kind of alleviates that issue too.
It's like, imagine a world where Mountains, that's
Mountains, yeah.
the developer of Florence, their next game was just an iPhone exclusive, Apple exclusive. And imagine if it was a similar game to Florence. I would not want to play Florence on my Apple TV because it's
No,
a game.
I wouldn't either.
Yeah, it's a vertical game designed to be played on your phone with headphones in. That's like how it's designed from start to finish. So,
Yeah.
and a lot of the games I've enjoyed most about that I've played as mobile games, although I'm sure you could play them on iPads and these sorts of things, most of the time I think they are preferable on your phone because that's kind of how they're designed to be played. Most of the ones that we see in these trailers and stuff, the ones that least interest me are the ones that I'm like Overland, you know? I'm like, no, I don't want to play that on my phone. Where can I play that else? I can play it on my Switch. All right, I'm playing on my Switch, you know? If I had an iPad and it was an Apple exclusive game, then yeah, okay, Overland's an example of a game where you're like, yes, that would be a lot better to play on a bigger thing. Or Apple TV obviously would be a lot better also because it's a strategy thing and you probably want to be able to see more of the map and concentrate on what you're doing and these sorts of things. It'll be interesting. I'm a bit weirded out that they don't have proper release dates for these things though. Like I feel like if you're going to announce it and be like, it's coming this year, they could have at least had a month or something.
Yeah.
You know? It's just, hey, it's coming in 2019. Uh-huh. What, like Q1, Q2, Q3? Like what?
There's 9 options, so
yeah. roll a D9. See what comes of it. See what you can.
I'm really interested to see what the price point's going to be on it.
I'm hoping it's $10 a month.
I suspect it'll be $10 American. Yeah. Which again raises the question of sustainability, but I guess indie games don't cost as much to fund, so if you get 1 million people doing it every month, it's like $10 million a month. I'm sure that would fund a fair number of indie games to be released. And I wonder how frequently they'll be adding games to the service, because then they'd have to have heaps and heaps of small studios making content. But I guess they do at the moment.
They do. They had that wall.
But a lot of that is like clones of different games and stuff.
Yeah. Like Devolver Digital was listed there. And it's like, okay, how many Devolver Digital games are just getting ported over to mobile all of a sudden? So, like, I highly doubt they're just publishing a whole heap of exclusive iPhone games and stuff. There's like 5. I think I saw an article today. It was like, there's 5. Kotaku had one that said 5 Australian indie devs like were on board for this. Obviously Mountains and a couple others as well that I can't remember off the top of my head. So that's good as well, I suppose.
Could this be a good alternative to the Switch?
No.
You wouldn't feel like you would. I guess you wouldn't feel better about giving a kid an iPad or an iPhone rather than a Switch.
Oh yeah,
There's a cost difference, that's for sure.
An iPad's more expensive than a Switch, though.
Yeah, but you can.
I mean, if you already had it,
I guess.
Yeah, it could be a second hand. You know.
I guess, yeah. And most iPhone games, of course, you know, they're all designed around touch controls and whatever else. But that's also the other thing. Like, I like mobile games, but they have restrictions. You know, like they all have to be designed touchscreen based. And any of those games that put a fucking fake analog stick and whatever else, I'm like, stay clear of. 10 feet pole, stay away from me, please. But anything that can be controlled kind of touchy is fine and whatever else. So we'll see what comes of it. Let's ask the Apple guru himself, Simon, to give me some answers to some questions I have. Joining us on the couch now, Simon from the Apple Slice podcast to talk about Apple, strangely enough.
Oh, who'd have thought? Yes, very welcome. Thanks very much for having me.
The first question I'm going to make for all guests from now on, how's the couch feel?
Just really plush, you know, like I feel like I've sat on it before. You know, like when people just build their own mold into a chair. I don't know if I have the exact same shape and size butt of one of the other members, but man, this is very comfortable.
I think you're sitting in Ash's spot.
Oh, of course. I mean, him and I have a
similar ass shape, I guess.
Yeah, we have a special kinship like that. Yeah. We often trade pants.
Yeah. All right. So Apple announced the Apple Arcade. Myself, Ash, and Cherie, just discussing on the show just before, the listeners would have heard, obviously, want to get your aspect on it, your take on it as a Apple fanatic. Obviously, you do an Apple-based podcast, which everyone should check out, Apple Slice, and I'll pimp that at the end. But you fell off games. This is the kind of thing people should know, I guess, to a point. And you can hear a lot about this on the House of Mario, whatever episode that is, I guess. I'm not exactly sure on the number, but look into that. Simon was on their podcast talked a lot about like playing Nintendo and stuff, but kind of not playing many games as he got older.
Exactly.
I guess. So, what is your reaction? Your initial reaction to the reveal to start off with, as an Apple fanatic, but someone who doesn't really play games much anymore?
Okay, so obviously with our podcast, we cover all sorts of rumors and stuff that are leading up to events, and especially that sort of stuff really ramps up. But the focus was very much on the TV Plus and the news side of it, and there was hints here and there of Apple might do their own gaming subscription thing, and I thought, well, if they ever did, it surely wouldn't be like a separate console or anything. It would be at least linked to the App Store, considering the games section of the App Store is so large and the highest revenue for them. So it still was a bit of a surprise. Like I had in my head, like maybe they'd cover it. And yeah, it was great. It's great to have surprises with events. It's great that nothing leaked. Apple Arcade itself, I think, is a fantastic name. Just I love alliterations by default anyway, and kind of rolls off the tongue. So I was very excited about it. It's cool how they're essentially just going to be baking it right into the App Store as its own little tab. Now, as you mentioned about House of Mario, I back in the day and still am a big Nintendo fan. I've always been following Nintendo related news and other gaming stuff, and it's actually funny. I think I'm like the most between Explosion Network and various other podcasts by our friends. I probably know the most about games, but don't actually play them. Like it's a really weird thing to have. It's like I'm actively interested in listening to it and learning about it, but I'm not playing it. So I feel like that's a point of relation within our community anyway. But on that note, I would not be surprised, and I would love if Nintendo had a game announcement for something whether it's exclusive or first to Apple Arcade, and I think that would come at the September iPhone event. So I saw the footage that they showed of several different games during the live keynote. And funny enough, they had this game called Oceanhorn 2. I'd never heard of it before. Never even seen Oceanhorn 1. But
big game. People love the first
but
one.
the character in that little snippet, I was like, holy crap, they got a Zelda game.
That's exactly. Oceanhorn 1 is basically just
Zelda game, yeah. And so I was like, damn, it's not Zelda, but it looks cool. So it kind of ticks some little boxes there. Visually, though, the types of games that they're offering here is definitely more up my alley. So I really love artistic puzzlers and storytelling games like Monument Valley and such. And they're definitely pushing the fact that these games are more about storytelling. So I feel like there's probably more depth to them than just being a standard shooter or just being a racer or something. I mean, they do have some bigger names like Sega with Sonic Racing is going to be a game on there, and I wouldn't imagine that would be too deep. But in terms of the other, games they showed, I was like, wow, that looks very interesting. So there is a dedicated page for this announcement, and you can see some game descriptions there and the type of developers. I see that Annapurna Interactive is back with a game, so they of course did Florence, which I really loved and reviewed. So there's some game description.
Donut County as well. They published.
Oh, okay, very cool.
Yeah,
and so that was cool. And then there's you scroll further down, there's a whole bunch of thumbnails of other games that are included too. So a good range of genres, at least from what I've seen. Offline play, I think, is a must, and that's fantastic. It's definitely in direct opposite to Google with Stadia. And it seems, from what I've read, that the exclusive titles are at least partially funded by Apple to actually create them, because
at least some of them that we can
yes,
cover. At least some
because
of them,
you floated the question of, okay, how's the payout structure going to work? It is kind of just good to know that peace of mind that there are at least some of the developers, working alongside Apple and being paid by Apple to work on these games. But ultimately, we need more details just to know exactly how that's going to work.
For sure.
Yeah, so that's pretty much my initial reactions of it.
So you mentioned like a couple games there. What are some of your favorite games that you've played on your phone, I guess?
More along the line.
Monument Valley.
Yeah. So more along the lines.
Florence?
So there was one called Typewriter. There's Monument Valley. Obviously, with stuff like Super Mario Run. I mean, I love that just because of the IP. I thought how they executed that was well. I think the paywall aspect was definitely a big roadblock for people, and I think that something like the next Nintendo game, whether they do it with Mario Kart World Tour or not, being put into Apple Arcade could be a good way for people not to actually be able to play through the entire game, you know what I mean, and just become a subscriber. It's more to me just the random, like the stuff that just has something compelling and unique visually. So Alto's Odyssey as well. Really,
I've got that on my phone right
yeah,
now.
love that one. As I mentioned, Florence before, and yeah, it's like I know that there are some strategy games and stuff and shoot 'em ups and that have appeared on mobile platforms, races as well. But I really feel like it's and as cool as, you know, being able to use the motion coprocessor and stuff is, and the fact that it can pull these games off fluidly and everything, I am very much in agreement that the touchscreen only controls is a hindrance for sure. So that kind of leads me on to the next part where I feel like I mentioned it before in a previous episode. Actually, when I had Drew from House of Mario on, I really think that this year should be the time that Apple release their own wireless controller. Particularly,
This is something we was looking up as the rest of us were recording just before. We was like, wait, have Apple released a thing? And I quickly begun Googling. And I'm like, no, they haven't, but you can buy a bunch of third-party stuff that apparently works with your Apple TV. So
so I feel like, huge hit product, AirPods, complete ease of use, very popular, always selling out. And they use at least the first one uses the W1 chip, being like a wireless chip that automatically has iCloud pairing and everything. It's very seamless. And if they enabled something like that within their own controller, and if the controller was like, you know, the Nintendo Switch Pro controller or something of that shape, I think that could go really well. And I really think that's going to almost be like for them to show their commitment to this as a platform. I think they're just going to have to get behind it and come out with their own controller. And they could do that at a September event. I certainly don't think they're going to launch this before September. So it is slated as coming this fall or coming later this year or whatever. So I'm thinking October.
I'm fine with that. I mean, I'm intrigued, and I'm hoping we'll get obviously more information throughout the next coming months before it's released. Like obviously price and stuff, which I kind of want to get you to put a bet on before we finish up here. But that sort of stuff to come out. When it comes to controller, I think it does need a controller because maybe a bunch of people do want to use their Apple TV or, you know, prop up the iPad and play
definitely.
some of these games that need a controller like a racing game. For me personally, I don't care for that because I have all the consoles. I have a PC. You know, like I've got so many options that all of the games that are going to interest me for this platform aren't going to be ones that require a controller. They're going to be games that are things I can't get anywhere else but on my phone and experiences. Like Florence is that kind of thing where Florence, you can't put anywhere else. It was a game designed for your phone, for you to put headphones in and just sit back and play it on your phone. It made the best use of that platform. And I would say I'm an fan of mobile games. Like I try to make an effort to find stuff on the store and try out stuff, and when I do find something I like, I'll often try and make sure I talk about it on this podcast or like tweet about it and stuff. And I have a heap of games on my phone I try and make time for, but all of them are things that I wouldn't want elsewhere, and that's kind of what I go looking for. So especially we're talking about Monument Valley before. You could put that on other platforms, but it just works so well as I've got 5 minutes, I'll do 1 or 2 levels, and the touch screen controls work so well, and it looks great on that small screen. And so my second question is going to be, do you think that this service could make iPhone users into gamers that aren't already gamers, or do you think it's going to be a service that's designed solely targeted at people that are already kind of playing games, or a bit of both, I guess?
Well,
which way?
So the type of games on offer, I feel like, is definitely a step up from what most people associate a mobile game to be. devices like iPhone, 10s and iPad Pro are very powerful, and it's
sure.
primarily been the stigma associated with Apple and touchscreen devices that has been the hesitation, because people are like, no, it's the touchscreen controls. It's like you can go on about how the new iPad Pros has Xbox One X level graphics, but if it ain't got a controller, then they're not interested. And I really feel like if there are those more controller-specific games, just propping up your iPad, like with the cover, you can just prop it up on the go, take your controller with you, boom, you've got a decent size, good size screen, awesome looking game, running great. That is, I feel like Apple Arcade is going to essentially become that area where I'm hoping the area where people that are trying to pull off or port console style games to iOS devices, it'll go into arcade, and they won't try and do like a dumbed down or shoddy version on built just for the mobile screen. So like a good example would be, I'd love a proper Tekken within Apple Arcade rather than the Tekken they released on iOS, which was basically just like pay as much as you can to win. It was horrible. I was really amped for it, and when it came out, I was just so let down. Like playing it visually, the menus looked a bit average, but the gameplay, the characters, everything ran fine on that. Loading was still a bit iffy, but man, when I realized to pay, it was just straight away, I was like in-app purchases, from the get-go. I was like, no, this is not. Yeah, if
I have no problem with microtransactions if they're done properly and they don't feel like they're trying to blood suck me at every corner. If they're just kind of there, if it's an option, if I can get away of not using them. I want to play a game where it makes me want to seek out the microtransactions from a free game because I'm enjoying myself so much. I want to give them money after I played it for a couple hours or something, not be attacked within the first fucking 10 minutes of playing something to try and spend money. So the best thing about Apple Arcade, obviously, is they've said no microtransactions in the games, no adverts in the games. Yeah.
Which is fantastic. Yeah, because man, any of those. And what's worse is ad splash screens in games. They're never actually designed at the right ratio or pixel resolution there. I'm just like, what is this crap? And it literally makes a great game feel like it irks me from a design perspective so much that I'll just pay just to get rid of it. It's not even the ad what they're offering. That's the problem. It's just how it looks. I'm like, oh, this game feels filthy now. It's got this tacky ad slapped on it. So yeah.
If I'm using something for an hour and I can go for the thing that says $2.99 to get rid of the ads, I'm like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Just get rid of them. Get out of here. I don't care. Just leave. Leave me alone, please.
Yeah. So the funny thing is, so when they had, you've got Apple TV Gen 4, so do I. When that came out, and you've obviously got the Siri remote, which so many people complain about, but I'm fine with. Yes, it's slippery, but I'm fine with using it. I use it all the time. Using it,
I use my phone.
And of course,
as soon as they added the app, I
use my phone heaps as well too, and my watch as well. But when they pitched that, it's kind of like, okay, yep, there's gonna be games on this app store on the TV, and you can use turn the controller sideways and use it as game. It was not a good experience. No. I remember playing because they were really touting Rayman at the time, and I love Rayman. I was playing that, and the fact I kept having to swipe, keep swiping to move, I was just like, man, I know there's a third-party controller available, but I know myself as someone so interested in their products, for me to feel like they're taking it seriously, it's like they should have just launched their own controller.
Just put a controller out, yeah.
And it is encouraging, though, that Apple Arcade so it's coming to, obviously, the big push being iOS devices, but Mac and the TV as well. So it's like they haven't... So while they're bringing the TV app and the iTunes app to these other smart TVs as a way to boost services, which is good, very good. I love that. They haven't forgotten about the Apple. They haven't written it off, and they're like, okay, yeah, we're going to bring these games to it too. So that's encouraging, and certainly the latest version, the TV 4K, the chip they put in there is plenty powerful enough to run some of these games. So. Yeah, I would be disappointed if there was no controller announcement. I would love a new Super Mario Bros. Just play it on my iPad. the controller. Just tick that box for me.
I don't know if you'll get that far. I feel like Nintendo the last couple of years has been obviously stretching outside of their box with just even having the mobile games they've got coming out as is, but they're all definitely ones that are designed as mobile games and they're not the ones that you'd see on their main console, I guess. The idea of having a proper Mario game on an iOS device to me is like, fuck, that would be Nintendo going quite crazy. But I mean, they've got changing of hands behind the scenes at the moment. And stuff.
Doug Bowser, yeah. And so, because we got, they delayed Mario Kart World Tour and the Dr. Mario World, whatever they called that.
Well, I can't remember.
Yeah. Did they delay it because of Apple Arcade? Probably not. I think that it sounds like it's going to have more of a paywall situation like Super Mario Run did. But the fact that there's always been the confirmation that they're working on a Zelda game for iOS, I'm like, a Zelda game in Apple Arcade would be fantastic. Like, I would just love to see that. I don't want to have waited this long for it just to be like a lackluster launch with a big paywall on it.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be the thing. It's like, if they announce it, because now we know Apple Arcade exists, and they announce it's just coming to the App Store, you're like, oh, App Store, that means probably microtransactions. Whereas if they come out and say, it's coming to Apple Arcade exclusive, you're like, oh, yes.
Yeah.
That means some of my worries are going to be put away here, so that's good.
Cool.
Let's go. So another thing we was talking about just before on the show was that I'm talking about the topic, and as I just said, I play enough mobile games that this announcement was semi-exciting to me. And I'm also someone who has a bunch of iOS devices.
Yeah.
I've got a Mac, I've got Apple Watch, iPhone, for Apple TV. Like, I've got things everywhere.
Yes.
My iPad broke. Maybe I'll buy another one day, but that's fine. But Cherie and Ash on the show, Android users,
yes.
And I kind of asked them, what would it take, and or do you think it would be possible that Apple Arcade could ever offer you enough to interest you to switching phones? And Ash said it's possible. It would take like a couple very good games that are exclusive to Apple Arcade.
Interesting.
But it would be something that's possible down the line, especially, your contract runs up and you're like, well, all those games are over there. Like, maybe I'll switch now. And Cherie had a kind of similar answer, but so it's just like wait and see kind of thing. But do you think this is something that could have happen down the line? Now, obviously, I'd say you're a little bit biased as a big Apple fan, but do you think it's possible that this service for people who enjoy playing games on their phones a lot could have like a bunch of Android phone users switching back, especially in a world where a lot of people kind of jumped off iPhones for Pixels, obviously, in the last couple of years, has been the big switch, I'd say. Do you reckon some of those people could be like, oh, look at these Apple Arcade exclusive games, like, all right, I'll switch back.
It's really been the case of the hardware has always been very capable. It's just providing the quality games and breaking that mobile game stigma. And as I mentioned before, I think Apple Arcade is a very good move towards that. Saying in terms of switching is very hard to tell because obviously they're at least breaking it beyond just iOS devices, as I said, Mac and Apple TV. They are touting over 100 games, very much like the same line that Xbox Game Pass does. So it definitely feels like as a valid game subscription service, it shows enough promise. But it's really going to be for people that just love their first-person shooters and that, I don't think, and say if they're an Android...
Not the platform.
Yes. Say if they're an Android user, I'm not expecting to see a big rush of first-person shooters on Apple Arcade. I really think it's, as I said, they're pushing the whole storytelling game factor, and it's very much more these things that have more character and depth and stuff to them. And
like, imagine a world where Mountain's next game, like the people who did Florence, their next game is Apple Arcade exclusive.
Yep.
A game that just won a shit ton of awards in a whole different bunch of places. Their game is Apple Arcade exclusive. It's hard not to go, some people might be willing to switch, especially if their contract's running up soon and they're not too attached to their Android device. Like, oh, my contract's up. the Florence people's game is an exclusive over there. Like, I don't care too much about my phones. I just kind of get whatever is good. I'll switch just because I want that game.
I'm wondering whether it's a case of not so much people switching, but people getting an iPad. Or just adding it into it because essentially, okay, but all bias aside though, but Android in the tablet space is pretty much a non-event. In terms of, no, like seriously, like in terms of actually having properly optimized software and compelling devices and that, pretty much Apple's main competitor is Microsoft tablet-based products and stuff, right?
Surfaces.
Yeah. And so I feel like it's easy enough for someone who isn't all up in the Apple space to be like, yeah, I'm all set up with my Android and my Google apps and stuff, but treat the iPad as kind of like their portable gaming device that's bigger than a phone.
Especially if they don't have a Switch,
yeah,
maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's so much going to be a convert. It's more just going to be like people dipping their toe in a different way, And there's plenty of other way. I mean, obviously, the Mac has never been seen as a gaming machine, but there's plenty of people that run Android devices elsewhere, but they do their work on a Mac, and maybe you could pick up users there. But yeah, the main thing is going to be through iOS devices, and definitely, I think if they bring out a controller, then the iPad's going to spike for sure.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. They just need to announce the freaking controller. They should have announced it with the thing. I think it would have made it a much more eventful story. I would have woke up to people talking about more so than just the service. But here's also the picture of the controller. Blah blah blah. I could see that be a lot bigger
well,
story.
considering what Stadia did, it's like here's a piece of hardware as well. So yeah, I would be interested to see how many Android users just go, "No, I'm going to stick with trying to run my stuff online through Chrome on my Android device." Do you know what I mean? So.
Yeah, we'll find out. Last thing, and you have to get this right. You're gonna put in your bet right now. How much do you think this service is going to cost? And if what you say is something you think's overpriced, how much do you think it would actually have to cost to be successful? I guess.
Okay, I flip the question back to you. How much is 1 month of Xbox Game Pass in Australia?
I think it's
$10.99.
$12. I think it's like it's either like $11.99 or $10.99. I can't.
I think it's going to be that.
Though.
I think they're going to match Xbox Game Pass.
Yeah, that's my hope and dream, I guess, and that's what I'd be perfectly fine. Because
I think
$11.99.
Yeah,
$10.99,
I think they've
whatever.
already matched it in the kind of the approach to it, where it's like, yes, we're going to be bringing out games to it consistently, and hey, here's 100+ to choose from the get-go. So yeah, because with Apple Music and Spotify, that's pretty much a price match too. And so I think that out of any competitor and the type of service offered, Game Pass is their primary one. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they price match it there. And hey, if they have a premium priced controller, then whatever, the Apple fans will pick it up.
Yep.
So I think its success obviously will be with the consistent release of new games to it, as well as just kind of the games being interesting and of a certain quality, with a mix of like your more indie level developers and then some larger IP thrown in. Because I feel like Apple Arcade could really become a cool indie dev platform, much like the Switch has.
Yeah,
and so TV Plus and News Plus, which were announced at the event, are supposedly, there's no pricing, but they're supposedly going to be $9.99 US, which would translate to a little more. Yeah. I know these conversions always change.
Yeah, it's hard. You do the conversion, but it doesn't really matter because by the time they add tax and all these other things, it's like it converts to $12, but they're charging us $20. How's that work out?
Okay, exactly. Cool. So I would just confidently say the price of Xbox Game Pass.
Yeah, that's how I feel like that's a good thing. My other one was kind of kicking around the idea of, do you think that they will offer a combined service for all three of the things, or two of them? The TV plus the games. Possibly,
that's what I was hoping for at the event. And because there was very little pricing shown, I think that is going to come, and it'll come in September.
Yeah, because I was talking about it. I'm like, News Plus doesn't really interest me, but I'd be intrigued to at least check out
TV Plus,
TV stuff and the game stuff, obviously. So if I could do the maps and be like, well, paying for those two separate still ends up more than paying for all three in a package, even though I'm not going to use one of them, so I'll just pay for the all-in-one type thing. You know, you'd have to work out if it works well enough, I suppose. So I'm hoping they'll do something like that because I'll at least want to check out 2 out of 3.
Yeah, because
just make it easier.
Yeah, because I'm definitely keen for TV Plus and Apple Arcade, and I already am Apple Music subscriber. So if I could put all 3 together, for
put
sure.
Everything in one. All right. Apple Arcade coming to you 2019. They didn't give us a date. Motherfuckers. Soon, at some point.
I mean, if this thing really takes off, then next year this could be rebranded as Apple Arcade Couch.
Yeah, well, it's the funniest thing when I saw the name. I could not get out of my head. I'm like, why is this show that, like, I can't wait for all the people looking for a podcast about Apple Arcade games, and they just float along this podcast in the podcast app, and they're like, this isn't talking about Apple Arcade. I'm like, no, it's not. We was here first. Go away. Sorry.
You get like a letter from Doug Bowser being like,
yeah, cease and desist.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, thank you for joining us on the couch today, Simon.
No worries.
Been good to have you.
It's just so comfortable. I don't want to stand up, but I've got to make space for other people. So yeah, great too. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. Thank you for coming. Thank you for joining us on the couch this week. Make sure you check out explosionnetwork.com for all our other shows, reviews, news, articles, and much more. Rate Arcade Couch on Apple Podcasts to help out the show, or simply share it on social media with your friends. That would be great. You can follow Explosion Network on Twitter at ExplosionPod, and you can join our Discord at explosionnetwork.com/Discord. You can follow me on Twitter at VivaLadil, VivaLadil. You can follow Ash on Twitter at AshleyHobby, ASHLEYHOBLEY, and you can follow Cherie on Twitter at CHERIACORNO, and you can follow the one Simon Blackburn on Twitter at PRECISE Path. And also, you should check out and follow his 2 podcasts, the Apple Slice podcast, which is on Twitter at Apple Slice AU. And then you should check out his music podcast, Take My Tone, at Take My Tone on Twitter as well. Thank you for Simon for coming along and joining us for a little bit today on the couch. Ash, you look like you've got something to say before I end the show. You busted?
No, I've got nothing to say. You didn't pronounce any of the words. You just spelled them out. So
yeah, but sometimes I don't need.
You don't need to know how to say them. I guess makes sense. You just need to know how to spell them.
Yeah, sit the
fine.
fuck back down in your corner over there, okay? See you here next week. Same time, same couch, same sass. Bye-bye.
It's close. Every trophy counts, or at least that's what Dylan would like you to believe. Join him and me every Tuesday when a shiny new episode of Platinum Explosion dings into podcast feeds. The #1 PlayStation podcast in the Oceanias breaks down all the latest in PlayStation-related news, releases, trophy lists, and much more. Just search your podcast app for Platinum Explosion and subscribe for free now.